Welcome to In Early, the crypto podcast, where I speak to those at the forefront of the digital asset space, telling real-life stories, discussing the growth and growing pains of the industry, and exploring how blockchain technology has made an impact on people's lives. My name is Matt Green, and I'm the blockchain litigation lead at Shoesmiths. This week I speak to Erica Stanford, the best-selling author of Crypto Wars, Faked Deaths, Missing Billions, and Industry Disruption. We look at the history of crypto scams from initial coin offerings to collapses of entire exchanges like Mt Gox, and hear her thoughts on where we are today, from the introduction of central bank stablecoins to the recent SEC filings against Binance and Coinbase. Erica gives her thoughts on how notable stories like Quadriga and BitConnect have shaped today's market, and how major players have adapted to ensure they are best positioned to mitigate their risk. Erica also runs the Crypto Curry Club, is a speaker and commentator on all things blockchain, and is a Fintech specialist at law firm CMS. We also talk about her next book, including Murder for Hire and the missing chapter from book 1. So Erica and I have known each other for a number of years, and it's through her Crypto Curry Club that I actually met Aidan Larkin of Asset Reality, who I've done one of the podcasts with. I've contributed a couple of articles about crypto asset recoveries for the Blockchain Industry Review, which was a monthly publication. And I'm very glad to have you here now, Erica. So welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Really appreciate it. So let's start with your book. Copy is here. What's it all about, and what prompted you to make it?
So the book's about the biggest hacks and scams in crypto. I can take no credit whatsoever for the idea or inspiration of writing a book. That was the publisher's idea. So they approached me with the idea of doing a book called Crypto Wars about the biggest hacks and scams in crypto. They'd already done a couple in the series about, I think, cyber hacks and something else. And the guy who wrote those didn't want to do one about crypto, but proposed that I did. And that it was perfect timing and maybe why they asked me to do it. My introduction, I'd been working in crypto for years and running the Crypto Curry Club events and knew lots of people in the space and sort of what was going on in this space. Yeah. But hadn't really looked into the scams other than following the whole ICO period quite closely and watching it. And then I heard the BBC's Missing Crypto Queen podcast series,
which you make reference to in the book, the opening chapters,
and it's fantastic. If you haven't listened to it, totally listen to it, and listen to that back to back, and then did what any logical person would do and sent Jamie Bartlett, the guy who wrote it, a fangirl email, basically being like, Jamie, I love your show. I run this thing called the Crypto Curry Club. Would you come talk at it? And he apparently heard about it and was up for it. So we had an event sort of in a curry restaurant, closed room, Chatham House rules, and Jamie told us all this stuff for an afternoon that he couldn't really share as publicly on a BBC.
So the door was locked. You made sure Chatham House rules.
Yeah. And it was fantastic, and it was a room full of people. So we learned loads and just eye-opening stories. Yeah, and it was a room full of people that had been in crypto since pretty much day one and since early days. And at that event and after that, it was all guys, because that was mostly who'd been in crypto, came up to me and a bunch of them told me all these stories that they'd had of, I saw this scam and I tried to alert the authorities, or I tried to go to law enforcement, or I tried to post on social media that was a scam, and all these different stories. And it was just utterly crazy. They'd had death threats for that. They'd had hate mail to their post. There's one guy who doesn't live in the UK, and the government where he lives has got a whole list of people that if they try to enter that country, they'll warn him because his life is perceived to be a danger because of how involved some of these scams are with, some cases, governments, corrupt governments, with mafia, with really sort of big organised crime gangs. So that was just crazy. And then from that, I was invited to, so on Facebook and other social media platforms as well, you've got all of these groups and chat channels either run by scams or run by people that have fallen for the scams but don't know that they've fallen for a scam.
Well, not yet.
They think that it's still the next best thing. So you've got all these open and closed chat groups of all of these scams. So I was invited into those by people who'd obviously been watching those. So I spent about a year just sort of sat in all of these just different groups watching people scam each other. And crazy. So I'd sort of already gone down the rabbit hole of watching a lot of scams just happen in front of you in these groups.
So it was a matter of you writing to Jamie Bartlett on the story, hosting the Crypto Curry Club, and then everyone telling your story.
Basically.
Their story, sorry.
Yes.
And then you're like, well, hold on. I've been sort of the soundboard for a lot of these people. Maybe something can be done about this. And then publishers came to
and then they reached out, and I was like, crypto scams, yes, good idea. And obviously totally underestimated how much work it would be to write a book.
Yeah. Well, it's heavily referenced. So at the back, there's like this massive reference section, so I can see the amount of work that's gone in. Like everything's footnoted. Like,
yeah, that was the legal editor's advice.
Yeah, I can imagine. So let's start sort of the front of the book. There's a lot to do with Ponzi schemes and multi-level marketing. What are they, and how are they different from each other? So
Ponzi. They're two different things, albeit one often uses the other. So a Ponzi scheme is a way of making money by taking money to pay earlier investors from the later investors. So you, for example, will say, I've got this wonderful product. It's going to make everyone lots and lots of money. And you get me to invest in it, and you promise, well, I'll give you 10% returns a month or whatever. That's quite high and unsustainable. So I think, wonderful, I'm going to get 10% return a month. Here's all of my money. And so you initially, to me and to the early investors, pay out the returns. So you pay out the 10% or whatever it is you promise, you pay out, and they get their money back, and they think, wonderful, we've invested, and Matt's fantastic. He's paying out. So we're going to tell all our friends and family about it. So a Ponzi scheme is really somebody promoting typically a scam, and getting early investors, paying them out. But the money that they're paying out doesn't come from the fantastic investment, because there is nothing. It's coming from the next people to invest. And at some point, there's no more new people investing in, or the amount of new people investing in is less than what is needed to pay all of the first investors back. And then it collapses. So that's a Ponzi scheme. Multi-level marketing is a tactic often used by Ponzi schemes. So, controversial opinion, but my own is that multi-level marketing should be banned. There's no reason why this is legal. So it's a marketing tactic where people pay commissions down a line in basically a pyramid shape.
Yeah, it's weird that they both have a pyramid.
Well, I mean, there's a correlation here. So multi-level marketing is, I want to sell this fantastic product. So I'll sell it to you. And then if you sell it to somebody else, you get a commission from that sale. But I also get a commission from your sale, going down often 7 or 10 or more levels. So it's a massively incentivized structure whereby you're incentivized to not only get other people to invest or to buy that product, but you're incentivized for them to get other people, and so on. And again, like a Ponzi scheme, the first people who get in early make lots of money because they're getting a cut of everyone else. And at some point, the people who get in towards the end, they have to pay to get in, to buy the product, or pay to have the right to promote it or whatever. And then there's no more people that will buy the product or invest because the market is saturated or it's exposed as being a scam. So multi-level marketing is inexplicably but legal as a structure. And there are some legal products that are sold in multi-level marketing, like vitamins or socks.
Well, it has to be a product, doesn't it? To make it legal, there has to be a product.
It has to be a product. But the way some things have got around it is a lot of the crypto Ponzi schemes, the only difference is that they made their product educational courses, which were basically you invest whatever, 100 grand or something, and you get a plagiarized PDF of
That's it. You mentioned the PDF. Yeah.
Exactly. So that makes it multi-level marketing, not a Ponzi scheme. Technically, it's a Ponzi scheme. But going on to multi-level marketing, I would argue it's legal. Apparently 98% of all people that get involved lose money. So not great statistics.
Yeah, that's
And also a lot of the products sold, like the vitamins, scientists will say, well, they're no different to water, and the socks tend to fall apart. So it's all a bit of a...
And then these sort of fall into the crypto world, right? Because you have these two types of structure that are, multi-level marketing we're saying is legal, but obviously Ponzi schemes aren't.
Yeah.
And they shouldn't be, right? Then it sort of falls into the world of crypto in sort of, I don't know, however many years ago. So let's just pull it back a little bit to sort of understand for those who may not what an initial coin offering is, and sort of how that interplays with Ponzi schemes and multi-level marketing. Like, what is an ICO?
So an ICO, an initial coin offering, it to be crude, it's a way for people or individuals to make a lot of money out of thin air in the crudest possible description.
Yeah.
So what an initial coin offering is you create a new cryptocurrency, maybe through hard work or maybe out of thin air. And one of the problems in crypto, or maybe problem isn't the right word, one of the features of cryptocurrency is that a lot of it is open source. So you can copy basically the code and for not very much effort or money, pay a freelancer or now even ChatGPT to create your own new cryptocurrency out of thin air. So what you had was this time, mostly sort of 2016 to 2018, where anybody could pretty much, there were experts popping up all over Fiverr and all of the freelance platforms offering to do this for $100 or really not a lot of money. Copy the code, invent a new cryptocurrency, give it a name, give it a logo, give it a website, and write some nonsense that this is the best token because if you want to buy wine, you need to buy this cryptocurrency token to be able to buy wine. Or if you want to, whatever, have a microphone, buy microphone token.
I think you mentioned like tea in your book. I think that was a good example, right? It was the Chinese tea.
No, that was one of the scam ones. And there were thousands and tens of thousands of these. And no business plan was, for the most part, there were some very, very good ones. For the most part, they had no business plan. Had they gone to a bank or to investors for money, they'd have been laughed all the way home. And there was a lot of hype and a bubble. But that's a cynical answer. As a concept, the initial coin offering, it's a fantastic concept. It's a way that companies can raise money. They don't give away equity. They give away tokens. They can raise money on a platform. They can get investment from cryptocurrency instead of fiat as a sort of core basic concept for a company to raise money from seed investors. It's a really sort of open way of crowdfunding because people could invest tiny amounts and traditional some of the company raises, they'd have only gone to sophisticated investors, people who could put in a large amount, and the ICO offered a way that people could invest not very much money into a company that they wanted to support or that they thought was going to do well. So as a core concept, it's a really good idea and a way of opening up investment to more people. Except I would argue in most cases, it got taken advantage of.
So it's an alternative to buying equity in a company. That's what it should have been to some extent.
You don't get equity, you
get a
tokens
token. And what rights do those tokens have, you don't know, and that's not always what's clear.
That's the thing, and a lot of them created the tokens just as a way of, we're just going to create tokens, because it was a way of creating money out of thin air for most. Not for all.
So why were they so popular? I mean, I understand there's a lack of red tape. It wasn't regulated. There's no need for any corporate governance to do this sort of stuff. Why was it so popular beyond that?
I would argue it's more a lack of a perceived lack of red tape.
Okay.
In that there's still legal structures in place. Which a lot of people choose to disregard or choose to ignore or didn't know about. I think it was hype, greed. There's been a lot of bubbles over time, and one of the features, Bitcoin and some of the earlier cryptocurrencies, went from nothing to a lot of money. People that had put in 100 quid into Bitcoin in the earliest days, that became an awful lot of money. I mean, we're talking exponential returns in the hundreds and thousands of % returns, which you just don't get anywhere else. So that they played on that, and a lot of the ICOs, well, this is going to be better than Bitcoin, invest now and we'll get these returns. And some of the worst ones guaranteed or promised returns, which obviously is illegal and you can't do anyhow. But they would say, well, you'll get 1,300% or whatever return if you invest in this, which is obviously totally a lie. But people bought in that because they wanted to believe that.
So it was just almost like a FOMO, a fear of missing out. It was that you saw Bitcoin sort of skyrocket and they've gone, well, I've been told that this is the new coin, and if you don't invest a little bit now or even a lot, then you may miss out on the opportunity.
Basically, and some people did well and some of them did well, and a combination of FOMO, greed, hope. Yeah,
there was some, in the book, there was a few that I noted. I appreciate the transparency of scam coin, right? It noted, I'm going to read it out because I actually wrote it down. It was good. It said, the only ICO you can be certain of gets 0% return from 100% of your investments, guaranteed. And then there was the useless Ethereum token. It said, the world's first 100% honest Ethereum ICO. You're going to give some random person on the internet some money and they're going to take it and buy some stuff with it. Probably electronics, to be honest. Maybe even a big screen TV. Seriously, don't buy these tokens. And yet that person received, what, 40,000?
I'm going to say that they're their words, not
that's a quote.
They heard
there was boob coin, Jesus coin. Like, why do people buy this stuff? Like, it's quite clearly, especially in that instance, it's so clearly not going to benefit the person.
I think it might be greed or ignorance.
Yeah.
Partly in the scam or the useless Ethereum tokens, it might have been curiosity to see what happens.
Or people just going, you know what, fair play, this person's being so honest. It's actually quite fun.
Maybe, or just thought, maybe that means less people invest, therefore, money is going to go higher, we'll make more money.
Yeah.
And I think to a degree also in that time, a lot of people had made a lot of money, especially people that had got into Bitcoin or Ethereum early. So that they had, a lot of people were seeing it like lottery, not lottery, like monopoly money. So they had all of this sort of cryptocurrency that had just gone up from not very much to sky high and were just...
And people made a lot of money, right? Because there were instances where people put a little bit in, it skyrocketed, they cashed out, and all of a sudden they're going, well, let's do that again.
Totally. And some of it was pump and dump. So, and there were all of these chat groups that one could join, or in some cases pay to join, and they would coordinate pumps. So a lot of the money that went into some of those, yes, it might have been people, and you don't know how much of it was the people behind the organizers trying to drive a bit of a price rise so that they could sell out their token.
Well, I remember there was a friend of mine, I think it was last year, maybe the year before, and he put, I think it was about 40 grand in some coin that I can't remember. Quite bold, to be fair. That's not a small amount of money. And he just waited and waited and waited, and it went up, I think, to about £1 million.
Damn.
And a friend of mine went, got to cash out.
Yeah.
Mad, like just cash out. And he went,
oh no. And
next day went to 2 mil. It was just shot up. On my friend, are you going, like, what are you doing? The guy went, no, I'm waiting. It's like, what are you waiting for? He went, I want to buy a football club. Next few days, back to zero. Done. And you just think to yourself, well, people see those opportunities, would have bought into those coins and gone, oh, I would have cashed out at 1 mil or 2 mil and wouldn't have waited. Yeah. But you see these stories.
And then other people would have bought in when I was at the 2 mil.
Yeah, exactly. And then ICOs raised between 2016 and 2018, raised $800 billion. To put that into some context, I looked it up before.
That would have saved a lot of rescue animals that need homes.
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, that's more than the market cap of Facebook, owner Meta, Visa, Tesla, as of the other day when I checked it out. But then the market dropped considerably. What happened?
I think the bottom fell out of it. It was a lot of hype. I'd argue it was a lot of bubble. I'd argue that it had gone up higher than it should have, higher than common sense dictated.
Yeah.
And at some point the bottom dropped out of it. I think it wasn't so much that it crashed down to nothing so much as it went a lot higher than it should have been and maybe crashed down to where it should have been.
Yeah, which is basically nothing, or at least significantly lower.
A lot of them.
I mean, what
and a lot of people lost money, and there was a lot of problems, and there's still a lot of problems in crypto which created fear. So
what caused, I mean, we can say that there was a lot of hype and excitement, but objectively, you look at the price of a coin and it goes up. What brings that coin's value up? There could be lots of people buying, and then there's someone, I guess, considering that because there's a lot of people buying in, there must be confidence and the value goes up. Is that how it works?
There's huge amounts of, I mean, call it for what it is, it's market manipulation, huge amounts in crypto, and certain billionaires are now being called out for it. certain people are being sued for it, certain people are being slapped on the wrist for it, and probably a lot more will get away with it.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of market manipulation because you can play the markets. And in some cases, all you need to do is put out a tweet if you've got enough followers, and that can create...
Really subtle.
Yeah. Or buy a certain breed of dog.
Yeah.
After which tokens are named.
Yeah.
And then people think, well, if they're buying this type of dog, that means that they must support the token. Therefore, we'll all buy in and we'll become rich. So there's a lot of overt and subtle market.
Some not so subtle.
And some not subtle market manipulation. So I think that's a huge factor that shouldn't be underestimated. And then they are the way that the crypto markets work. You don't have huge amounts of liquidity. If you buy a little bit of some of the tokens, that's enough to effectively push the price up because of supply and demand. If there's not enough crypto available, then if you buy a bit, then that just pushes the price up. So of course that's played on. Yeah,
I guess there's a lot of factors, and it sort of crashed down to where it should be, which I think needed to happen to clear out that sort of first phase of all these relevant tokens. You're probably the best person to ask this question to, given the book. What are the ingredients of a good scam? So you've sort of gone through one coin, and then you said it was like a cult, right? You said there was mention of a strong personality. I think they had a secret handshake. You go through that in the book. Bitcoin held investors' money so that it couldn't be dealt with by anyone else. It sort of ring-fenced their money away from them.
I mean, that's a good way to get people's money and they don't ever catch out.
Exactly. So what should people look for when they're interacting with this industry that would alert them to something being a scam? Like what is it that people should be looking out for?
The skeptical side of things, you would say most things. But there's a lot. So a lot of projects aren't transparent about who's behind them.
Yeah.
So they might have cartoon characters saying this is whatever Crypto Dan or this is Sam or whatever. So if there's no
Crypto Dan, is that a real story? I feel like it probably is.
Yes, but it might not have been Crypto Dan, but something along those lines. Yes. So I think if you don't have the transparency of who's behind a project, assume the people are fake. That's a frequent thing.
Yeah.
If there's any promises or guarantees about returns, avoid.
How can they make that promise?
A, it's illegal. B, you can't. And then looking at some of the returns, some of them say that they're going to get. I think step back and be realistic. If you look at banks and funds and investment managers and so forth, they've got big budgets. They employ a lot of the smartest people in the world. They've got software, they've got AI, they've got all of the algorithms, they've got everything that the most amount of money can buy to trade or to invest as well as anybody can. And they don't guarantee to get whatever percentages return a week or a month or whatever. So then I think exercise a bit of common sense in that thing. So I think if there's any lack of transparency and any returns, if anything's too good to be true, if somebody says, hey, we've got this wonderful trading algorithm, send us your money and we'll invest it. Well, if you've got such a wonderful trading algorithm, why would you share it? Why wouldn't you just be trading
quietly on your own, making loads of money? Or why are there loads of spelling mistakes on your website? And why is your website rubbish?
Spelling mistakes is
that always gets one. Spelling mistakes.
Looking at the custody or lack thereof, and then all of the scams, what they're trying to do is get you to part with your money. Yeah. So anything that says basically send us your crypto, send us your money. And then one of the problems with scams is some of them are really sophisticated, so they'll copy an app or a website.
Yeah.
And at face value, you really can't see a difference. So the worst type of scams are the ones where it's a phishing link, where basically people get tricked into clicking on something they think is legitimate. Which is harder to avoid because then you've got to be a lot more careful about what you click on. And scams are going more into that direction. But I think any good offer, don't believe it.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? I had a client and he was using what he thought was a legitimate investment website, and it just turned out that it wasn't. And you look at it and it seemed pretty good. And it sort of took him a while to realize that actually the numbers he saw on screen were just some guy putting up numbers on an Excel spreadsheet rather than taking and investing his money. So I think there's some really obvious things, but like
if they're trying to message you on Telegram or WhatsApp or any other channel, it's guaranteed a scam.
I'm trying to find a quote in here because I think you start it early. In normal circumstances, the age-old adage goes: if something looks like a duck, swims like a duck, and quacks like a duck, then it's generally considered to be a duck.
Yeah.
I think you stand by that, don't you? That's the opening lines of the book, and that's probably right. But isn't this then, and I appreciate that some people have different feelings about this, and given the fact that we are at this moment in a position whereby this type of activity is unregulated, is there not a sense that this is, to some extent, the risk you take if you're going to play with crypto assets? Then be prepared to lose it all because it's not regulated, and you might need to cut your teeth and learn a few things about the industry. And people say who've made plenty of money to me, oh yeah, well actually years ago I got scammed and I learned a shed load about. Is that part of it?
Yeah, I think so. And one of the things you learn is you can't trust any platform. I mean, even the biggest platforms now. We don't even need to name any names. Even the biggest crypto exchanges are currently being sued for varying things. And we've seen some of the biggest. FTX was one of the most trusted platforms. Loads of people trusted. And collapsed spectacularly. Lots of people lost lots of money. So I'd argue that any centralized entity, especially with crypto, where they say, "Oh, we're going to look after your crypto for you," you can't trust anything.
Yeah. But then what can we do? I mean, to some extent, it's also, to say the word influencers is wrong, but you have celebrities endorsing certain products.
Yeah.
And people believe that because of celebrity endorsement. And then it goes upside down. And
well, one of the problems has been, there's been a number of celebrities wrist slapped and fined for it. A scam will go to them, hi, celebrity influencer with millions of followers, promote this thing, and then celebrity influencer who knows nothing about crypto will go, oh, this Ethereum Max token or this whatever token is wonderful, I've invested, or this is great. And they don't disclose that they've been paid lots of money for it. And also they don't disclose that it's a scam, and maybe they know or they don't care, or maybe they just don't look into it and go, thank you for paying me probably millions to promote this. So yeah, I don't trust.
What did Taylor Swift say about FTX? Was it FTX where she said, oh, it sounds like securities, and then she didn't invest or something? Something like that, where she came out and actually was really quite sensible and was like,
right,
I don't think I'm going to do that.
Okay.
So fair play to her. She got it right.
She's quite smart.
I think probably she is. I mean, she's doing all right, I think.
Yeah.
I might get her on the next podcast, maybe. What do you think?
Cool. Yeah.
But apart from scams, I mean, isn't there an issue to some extent, right, that not everything is a scam? Some businesses are just badly managed. I mean, Mt Gox seems to be, unless you tell me otherwise, an example of that. It just seems like there could be an influence of just bad luck, mismanagement.
Yeah, I think it's not fair to chuck the word scam at everything.
Yeah.
I think also it's not right to put everything down to bad luck. I think Mt Gox was just shoddy management with no controls whatsoever.
Can you tell us a little bit about what happened with Mt Gox, people who don't necessarily know, and just very briefly?
Yeah, so that was it's in the book, but it's one of the earliest and was the biggest crypto exchange at one point. At least 70 or 80% of all crypto was flowing through it, and it was based in Japan, and it was trusted, but also it was sort of the first real place where you could buy crypto. And it wasn't easy to send crypto to it. People had to change money by various ways to get it to this exchange in Japan. But then what happened, the guy managing it clearly wasn't managing it, and it seemed like didn't really care what was going on. And there'd been numerous hacks that had been basically siphoning off funds, and he just never noticed that or never checked it. And it seems like he or others were just taking money out of it, spending money, a lot of which was hacked that they just didn't notice. So that they thought, oh, it's fine, we're just bringing in money, and they just didn't notice or want to look into their accounts. To at some point they realized, oh, there's basically no crypto left, it's all disappeared. That's not bad luck. I mean, yes, okay, it's bad luck that they got hacked, but that's totally irresponsible.
It's just mismanagement.
Security principles in place. You can have ways of storing crypto where it wouldn't have got hacked. You could have had cybersecurity. You could have checked the accounts. You could have there's a lot of things that they could have done to prevent that. So, I don't think Mt. Gox was a scam. I also think that they were utterly responsible for the loss of a lot of people's money.
So it's, to some extent, scams, bad management. So then, I mean, when I was reading the book, I was thinking, why is it crypto wars? Like, why the word? Because there's scams and this.
Yeah.
Like, was that a personal choice?
The crypto wars, that was what was given to me by the publisher. So because they'd already done, I think it's called Cyber Wars and Digital Wars.
That makes sense.
They proposed a bit called Crypto Wars.
Yeah.
And let me come up with the rest of it. So
that's kind of fake death, missing billions, industry disruption. Yeah. I think that's a good description. I always wondered that. So now I've got the answer.
Okay, you've got the answer.
There are a lot, I think, of tales within your book that are relevant now. And I'm going to, when I was preparing this, I put some quotes down, so apologies, I'm going to read a little bit. But one story is about Quadriga, and you sort of say within that there were no separate accounts, client accounts. All Quadriga funds went into a big centralized pool. And then earlier in the book, you saying some exchanges would store their crypto they had centrally in one wallet or account and keep a record of who had what. Had every user's crypto been stored separately, that would have been safer in the event of a hack. And you refer to Mt. Gox. But on the face of it, to my mind, we're still there. I mean, major exchanges have a handful of addresses, pooled addresses.
Which is, I would argue, the problem. I would argue the problem, not the only problem behind FTX, but a large part of it. And there's recently been the SEC has recently seen Binance.
Well, that's what I was going to mention. Binance, that's how they operate. They
and that there's 136 pages of this court document, and they're effectively accusing Binance of exactly the same of users' crypto goes into one pot, and CD and Binance go, thank you very much, and commingle, and that's the accusation of Binance and other exchanges. Now, I'd argue that's why FTX lost so much of users' money. That's not limited to Quadriga. I would say that that's an inherent problem with centralized storage. And one could argue, well, that's how banks operate. And I think there's two points that. Yes, that's how banks operate, which is why there isn't a huge amount of trust in the banking system. In that a lot have collapsed. A lot of people have lost money in banks, and it's easy to go, oh, it's safe to keep money in banks. Well, lots of people, that hasn't been the case. Certainly in many countries abroad, a lot of people have lost money in banks, and lots of banks have collapsed. We've seen that recently. But also, on the other side of that, to operate as a bank, albeit there have clearly been some exceptions, but typically, for example, in the UK, you have to have a banking license. There's certain checks, there's certain procedures. It's a pretty regulated, sort of monitored industry. So yes, you've got all the risks that come with banking, but then also there's probably slightly more checks that have been in place on that.
So surely it's lose-lose then, because if someone like Binance, I don't know, even seeks to get a registration from as a bank, they still are at risk that banks are at risk as well, because they
I mean, we've seen 3 large banks collapse.
Yeah, exactly.
And more collapsing. So I don't think that's a uniquely crypto problem. I would argue the safest way to store money, I mean, it used to be when dollars were pegged to gold, and if you have your own little vault and you have your own little bit of gold in that, or your own coins in that, and with crypto there are ways where you can store your own crypto, and people do that, and yes, okay, then they're responsible for remembering the keys and so forth to it, but that keeps that crypto safe from being mixed in a pot. And
I mean, I have a hard wallet, and it's great. I love it. I was talking yesterday to a friend. He's got a Trezor, I've got a Ledger. They're both great, but like going back to this to some extent, I mean, has the industry not learned its lesson from all of this, or understood that actually, if there was a mechanism whereby funds could be stored separately in or under the control of an exchange like Binance, then that would solve a massive issue that the banking industry and the crypto industry has? I mean, is that the solution, and they just haven't done it? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes, but then you're relying on people trusting that institution, and not all institutions have been proven to be as trustworthy as one would like. So you've got to then everybody trust that institution, and then you've got the other argument. So Ledger, for example, the wallet, they do hardware wallets, which have been pretty universally trusted and seen as a safe way to store crypto. And they recently released what they proposed as an optional upgrade, whereby instead of people risking losing their private keys, because one of the features with holding one's own crypto in such a wallet, you've got to be responsible. It's
proper self-custody.
Yes, it's exactly. There's like a password to it that you've got to remember. And if you lose that or forget it, then you lose your money, which lots of people have lost. So they proposed a way where they could effectively store the passwords in a third-party cloud. And then there was huge amounts of uproar and people questioning the whole integrity of the brand and saying that goes against the whole thing, and how can it be trusted if you've got access to our passwords? So yes,
it's not an easy thing to turn over, but if there was a way for maybe some of the big exchanges to consider how to hold people's funds separately, then maybe we wouldn't be in the position we're in now. And maybe there's less.
But then also one of the issues has been some of the exchanges have said that and then still not held funds separately.
Yeah, well, I think that's definitely something that's probably going to come out as the years go on to find out.
And one of the frustrating things is crypto analytics tools are incredibly powerful and reveal basically everything, not everything, but 90-something%. So if more crypto analytics tools were used more and that data of exchanges or platforms were more transparent, people would see clearly, crypto is going in and crypto is going straight out to Founder's Wallet or whatever. And then...
Well, I mean, maybe that's something that needs to be addressed sort of more broadly. There's another point I want to touch on, which is, again, your chapter about Quadriga, which is was a crypto exchange. It involves a story about the questionable death. So people who are going to read this, that's the fake death chapter. Yeah. You've noted within, I'm just quoting, 250 million Canadian dollars of customers' funds behind private keys, which only he, the guy who was running it, had access to. And that meant then when, quote, when sending crypto to Quadriga, you were signing away the control of your crypto, end quote. Do you think then that that's why in certain instances you see in the terms and conditions that certain exchanges say that they don't hold your crypto? So I had a look at this on Kraken's terms. So their latest terms as of today's recording was the latest iterations, the 18th of May 2023. And it says within that title to digital assets and NFTs at all times remains with you and is not transferred to Payward, which is their registered company. And it's sort of the same with control. You control the digital assets and NFTs held within your Kraken account. Do you think that's why, because of what's happened with Quadriga? Do they not want liability? They don't. Is that how you see it?
Yeah. So the terms and conditions, I mean, I should add, I'm totally not a lawyer, but I think it was with Celsius, one of the lending platforms. I think it was Celsius, where people, the way that users had stored their money affected when the platform had gone bankrupt, if they got that money back or not. So if the terms and conditions say you hold your own crypto and you're just storing it there, treating it effectively like a bank vault, then you have the right to get that money back. But if you've put your money in the sort of centralized pool, and what some of the platforms or lending platforms did was, as an incentive to get people to send their crypto to the centralized pool, was pay effectively like interest. So there was a financial reward or incentive to get people to store their crypto in the centralized pool. And so what the terms and conditions have said, and since the lawyers have deduced, is that people that put their crypto in the centralized pool don't have the automatic right to get their crypto back. That crypto is deemed to be part of the estate of the platform. So platforms are working on that.
It's not easy, right? Because they essentially control your assets, but then they say they don't because they don't want liability. And I suppose it's just, it may well be that these terms, although drafted for the benefit of the exchanges, it's not how it is in real life.
That has also happened. And it's one of the sad facts that you might have a wonderful website and wonderful looking terms and conditions and wonderful offers and promises, but that doesn't mean anything if the guy or team running it is a fraud or intent on taking everyone's money and running off with it, which has also happened.
Yeah.
So that's a cynical answer, sorry.
I'm enjoying the cynicism. I think it's important to have because, I mean, it may well be because of who you are in the book that you've written that you are cynical on some of this.
I'm becoming more cynical today.
So the book refers to specific stories in the world of crypto scams. You've got the one coin made famous by, as you say, the missing crypto queen. You go through the McAfee story, Mt. Gox. If you were to publish a part 2 of this, which I'm hoping you will, what stories and what characters are you going to include?
Well, so my favourite chapter for Crypto Wars, the first one, I wasn't allowed to publish. Legal advice was...
Oh, so there's actually a missing chapter.
There's a missing chapter, and legal advice was to not include it. And we don't need to name the company. It's about one of the biggest stable coins.
Yep.
And
might already have an understanding. Yeah.
I think anyone that knows me knows exactly which one it is. It's about one of the biggest stable coins. They've got lawyers, and apparently their lawyers wouldn't have wanted it to be included in the book about the biggest scams in crypto. There's a lot to go on.
I guess it's maybe because they're ongoing, and a lot of the characters here are either dead or...
Correct. This will follow legal editorial advice.
Right, got you.
Yeah, correct. So book 2, I was happily writing away about dark web and hitmen for hire scams and all of the nice, exciting stuff about the early days of crypto. And then last year happened, and not all of the big crypto companies collapsed, but domino effect of loads of crypto companies collapsed, and there's too much. So yes, what will be included will be found out when I've written. But there's so much. You've got loads of, you've got the ransomware where crypto isn't anything about it. It's a monetary tool used to extract money out of people. You've still got all the scams. You've got the hitman for hire scams, which I find really, really interesting.
Can you tell us about like what a hitman for hire scam is?
Just wonderful.
Go on.
I find it really interesting. So there's websites all over the dark web and on the regular internet. So if you just put in hire a hitman or whatever, there's loads of sites.
Okay.
Loads of sites.
Too many sites than you would expect.
Oh, I mean, you really expect
the
site
should,
for that.
Yeah.
But there's loads of sites and all imaginative titles like hireahitman.com or rentakiller.com or whatever. And you've got all of these sites, and they all say, we've got a wonderful team of assassins and we can do anything you want us to do. And if somebody has wronged you or cheated on you, then they deserve to die, and we offer all these services, and here's our price list if you want them to be tortured, if you want a limb cut off, if you want their car tortured, if you want them murdered, if you want them shot by this type of person who's just an ex-drug addict, it's that price. If you want them shot by a trained army sniper, it's that price. If you want it to look like an accident, it will cost more. If you want to make it look like it's suicidal, you've got all these price lists and all these wonderful offers. And they say if you want somebody tortured or murdered, contact here now. So you've got a nice contact form, and then chat support, and they've
got nice customer service.
Very good customer service. So they'll engage with people, and so you might email in and go, oh, this girl called Erica, I want to have her killed, and here's her address, and here's her car registration plate, and I know she's going to be at this place on Wednesday, and then she's going to drive to that place, or she's going to be home at whatever time, or always or every Saturday morning she's at this address, or whatever. They'll give a lot of information, and they'll say, well, we need photos of this person, we need all the details of this person, we need their whereabouts. Oh, and of course we need their address, and you've got to pay in Bitcoin. So here's the price, and pay in Bitcoin. And then that's kind of where it gets interesting, because there's not a lot of unexpected murders, and there's none that have been linked to the sites. So either they're just scams, and the sites go, thank you for your Bitcoin, you stupid fool. Or they're sites that go, thank you for your Bitcoin, you stupid fool, and I'm taking all of this information straight to law enforcement, who will then go...
Well, that was going to be my next question. I wonder whether... I mean, there's a data breach. I mean, I'm not going to get into data laws, but essentially you're giving over personal data to a third party.
So, some of them have got working agreements, which they are quite open about with law enforcement, where they basically go, it's I mean, I don't know if it's a data breach if you go, hey, you know, I want to kill somebody, and then you go to the police, go, hey, there's a hit out on this person.
Yeah.
And some of them are honeypots run by law enforcement. So,
okay, so these are sort of, it's a little bit like entrapment by the police.
Oh, totally. All by the people running the site. And the sort of scam element is people get scammed out of their Bitcoin and don't get the murder they've paid for. But, you know, do you?
Well, lucky that they don't. Yeah, lucky.
So it's really interesting. And then there's loads of information and loads of cases. I mean, constantly in the news, like at least every week, there's a case where somebody went on one of these sites and paid good money, you know, 5 or 10 or more £1,000s or dollars in Bitcoin to have somebody killed, and then they get arrested.
Do you know what's really weird is that a lot of the time I get people call me up and say, I've fallen victim to a scam. Can you trace my cryptocurrency, see if we can get it back, right? And of course,
you traced it to a hitman for hire site.
Well, but you'd never get that, right? Because that person, we're not going to go, I tried to murder someone.
Well, no. And so one of them, where the guy is now in prison, so there's only been 2 known people that have been sort of killed that were targets on them, and the most famous was in America, probably Hobbs. And the guy was having an affair and wanted to, he was a church leader, so he didn't want his church finding out and he could get divorced. So logically, the best thing to do is pay to have your wife killed. So had engaged with one of these sites. And that site, which was the biggest hitman for hire site, had been infiltrated by hackers who were sending all of the information straight to law enforcement. So it was a known thing. So anyhow, so he'd been desperately trying to get this hitman to kill the wife, and then the FBI got involved, or the local police, or whatever, got involved and went round to their house and made this stupid mistake of saying to the wife in front of him, "Oh, there's someone that's got a hit out on you. Do you know who it could possibly be?" And anyhow, at some point, he got frustrated and impatient and just killed her himself.
So he did it. Oh wow, he did it himself.
Well, he tried for months to pay this hitman, and the correspondence is fascinating because in pretty much every email, the hitman scam is like, "Oh, sorry, we couldn't do the hit this time, but if you pay us more money, we can send a better person."
Scam, that's like
total classic scam. I mean, he's clearly a total buffoon and a fool. And every email was pretty much extracting more money out of him. And then anyhow, he realized that they're not going to kill her and killed her himself, and he got arrested. But what the police then realized, because that was the first Bitcoin case that they'd had in this small town somewhere in America. And months before that, a guy had gone to the local police station going, "I've been scammed out of 5 or 6 grand or whatever it was in Bitcoin." And they hadn't really followed up, and they didn't know anything about it. And that complaint was him going to the police that he'd been scammed out of this Bitcoin on this hitman for hire.
So he almost sort of turned himself in.
Yeah, and then but they didn't know, they didn't put the 2 and 2 together until he'd actually been arrested, and they'd worked out that demonstrably it was him that had killed his wife. And then they went on his computers and they saw all this correspondence.
And this is one example of this. So
well, it's rare that usually the police will go to the victim and will make sure that they're safe. And the victim, usually there's only one person that will have that much information. So it's, and then they can work out pretty quickly who it is and get the person arrested. So usually the victim doesn't end up getting killed by the husband.
So we've got murder for hire in the next book. We've got potentially a chapter where someone advised legally that you shouldn't include them. There's going to be all sorts of...
There'll be mentions of stable coins maybe, but definitely murder for hire. And some collapses.
When might we expect this to be published?
Oh gosh.
That's a big question.
That's a big question.
And you're leaving it there, aren't you?
And I'm going to...
Completely fair. So moving on a little bit, we talk a lot about crypto being the Wild West at the moment. I know there's regulation coming in certain jurisdictions. Do you still think that we're there, or do you think we've moved on a little bit? I mean, we're still seeing scams and collapses of businesses. Would you say it's still a Wild West, or are we moving in the right direction?
I would, but in the same sense that everything kind of is. And so there's scams all over Facebook Marketplace.
Yep.
My parents get a phone call pretty much every day.
What, on their landline?
Yeah. which is, clearly a scam, but they don't see it. They're in the 70s. There's email phishing scams. There's scams and there's problems everywhere. And statistically, crypto scams are only a tiny percentage of all of the scams out there. So I'd say there's elements of crypto that really are. And lots of ransomware that's paid in Bitcoin, and there are lots of crypto scams, and there's lots of problems in the industry. And I'd argue that that's not a crypto problem. That's a general problem.
Yeah, crime and fraud problem. Because is there such thing as a crypto scam? It's just scams that involve the payment of crypto, right?
That's trying to get crypto out of people instead of cash or instead of whatever other currency.
Because people are less informed about how it works, right?
Because they think it's anonymous, and it isn't. So it's exactly that. I'd say most scams involving crypto aren't crypto scams so much as they're using crypto as a method of payment or playing on the hype of crypto. I don't think most of the scams are so much a crypto problem as a broader problem. And I'm in a really lucky position at CMS law firm where I work, and with my work I see all of the cool stuff. You see all the good companies that are doing stuff that are working on how to make custody safer, working on better user experience, working on all sorts of good stuff. So, I talk more about the scams and write about this because it's the exciting, juicy bit.
Yeah, people don't want to read contracts of people doing really well, do they?
No, but 95% of what I see is all the really good stuff.
Yeah.
So, I don't want to brush crypto with it's all bad, it's all a scam, it's all a Wild West problem. I think there's a broader societal problem where it's, especially now with digital fraud, it's easier to commit crime online. There's less risk, you're less likely to get caught. You can hide away in countries and jurisdictions. North Korea is a popular one. And get away and do with pretty much what you want.
I mean, it's not helpful that some of the bigger names in the crypto blockchain space are sort of being investigated. I mean, in recent news,
FTX and similar haven't helped.
Yeah, well, 100% not. And then we've got the SEC pursuing Binance and Coinbase. I mean, we touched on it earlier. That doesn't help the industry so much, or maybe it does.
I think there's a few things. There's a lot of companies in the crypto space that haven't operated as well or as transparently as would have been ideal. FTX is a classic example. So I think in some way, getting rid of some of the companies or forcing some of the companies to act in a way that's safer for their users is a good thing. I'd also think, just my opinion, but law enforcement, not in all cases, but things like the SEC, there's an agenda, and governments have an agenda to bring out CBDCs, to bring out central bank run digital currencies.
And it's clearing the way, potentially.
Which are the best possible way of controlling populations. And CBDCs have inexplicably got lots of supporters, but they're the best way of controlling population and the best way of exerting that control. So crypto is a competition to that, and it's a way of payments that are outside of government control, which is part of the appeal and benefit. So I think partly it's good to get rid of some of the worst, but partly it's quite worrying because there clearly is an agenda to promote central bank run government controlled digital currencies.
Yeah, I mean, my sense of central bank digital currencies is all a bit scary.
Oh, they run away screaming.
And I'm surprised at the position in America to some extent, because obviously their culture is about sort of freedom, and that includes monetary freedom. And yet if you have these central bank stable coins, then there is an opportunity for government to sort of control the money in a way like they've never done before.
I think it's more than an opportunity. I think anyone would be naive to say anything other than that's guaranteed what will happen.
Do you think so?
Yeah.
Sure. There'll be protests, there'll be uproar. I mean,
look at what happened with COVID.
I mean, yeah.
Look at what happened with COVID. There's more regulation just gets brought in, and how they'll sell it with the central bank digital currency is it won't be, governments won't be doing this. You've got to do this because we're trying to use this currency to control you. It will be, this is easier to use, this is cheaper, this is a better user experience. If you go to the airport, you won't have to queue. If you use this currency, you get in the special queue, you get in the VIP pass, you get these discounts, you get preferential interest rates. They won't be overt about it. They'll be like, well, you've got two options. You can either use traditional money or you can use the CBDC and you'll save X%, or you'll get to the front of the queue, or you go for the VIP pass. They'll do it so subtly that people don't read terms and conditions anyhow, but they won't have a clue what they're signing up for. They'll think, great, this is, I get a discount, or I get treated whatever better, and they'll do it so subtly that people won't have a clue what they've signed up for. And then governments are good at controlling the media and at telling people what to do. So people will think, oh, it's great that we've got all of this security.
Well, I'll be surprised if it happens in America because of that dynamic and push for freedom. What was interesting is in the papers relating to Binance and Coinbase, there was no reference to Ether, I don't think. And I think Gary Gensler's has come out and said Bitcoin is the only one that wouldn't be considered a security. So maybe it doesn't defeat the argument that they want to clear the way for central bank stablecoins, but at least there's some recognition that it is different,
which is good. And
good versus loads of bad in your mind, is that right?
No, I know I'm cynical. I'm very pro Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Very pro.
Maximalist.
Getting more and more.
Yeah.
Do you know, more and more and more and more? Yeah. In the sense that there's a lot of problems around Bitcoin, but none of the problems are Bitcoin itself. It's the sort of the platforms that are taking advantage of ways to make money around that, whereas a lot of the other tokens are less secure.
And with different things in mind when it was designed.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, sort of my next question, but we may have touched on it a little bit, but let's sort of tease it out a little bit. There's a sense that the US is crypto allergic. Now we've seen that. And other nations, even the EU, are looking to engage. I know the UK is looking to engage, and there's papers coming out. Is that the experience that you have? Do you think the US may be a little bit more allergic to it, or that?
It seems that the SEC has been, but then there was a recent case where lawmakers in the US are going, hey, the SEC is overstepping. So I think there's certainly factions.
I think there's probably some leaders.
Yeah, totally. And there's certain opinions and there's certain agendas. The EU is gone ahead. There's certain jurisdictions that are being much more receptive and open, and what we're seeing is companies going there and basing there, and of course those countries have to accept that there's certain risks that come with crypto, but also it means that you've got a lot of good companies going there and basing there and bringing or attracting skilled employees, and I think the US and the UK have already lost a lot of companies and are going to continue to lose a lot of companies, and what we hear, especially in the UK, is not how do we get set up in the UK because this is a great place to be. It's where should we set up, and it isn't UK.
I get the same question. Yeah. And it was Cyprus, now a lot of people, Dubai, now it's all these, but it's
Dubai or Switzerland or Europe. It's not the UK. And it's not even a question of should we get registered in the UK as well. It's just where should we go.
And a lot of it is, I want to register somewhere else, but I'd like to operate if I can in the UK.
Well, I tried to register and I was rejected on no grounds whatsoever. And I've spent lots of money on legals and times, and we know our application isn't even going to be looked at for 2 years.
Is it a sense then that the UK is in an interesting position because the US has sort of, to my mind at least, said, we are going to clear a lot of this out and we're not particularly interested unless we have our own US agenda. Got the EU have kind of said, okay, we've considered stable, because MiCA to my mind is a lot about sort of stable coins, and we've got different jurisdictions slowly building their regulation. The UK sort of pulled back a little bit and we're sort of waiting. Do you think that's beneficial to see what the lay of the land is, or do you think we've missed the opportunity?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think the UK, I mean, I'm as anti-Brexit as it's possible to be. So Brexit should never have happened, but once it did, the UK could have taken advantage of what there could have been to take advantage of. And I feel like now it's got behind, and
so we're behind.
I think so, and so many companies have left. One stat I heard from a founder was that 90% have already left, and I think so many companies have left, and once they leave, they're not going to come back. They're not going to come back
unless there's a mad tax incentive.
Well, they're not going to. I mean, companies that left are now, hey, we love the life. We've got a house on the beach. We've got good weather. We've got outdoors stuff. We've got a better life. They're not going to come back.
Okay.
I think maybe that's me being cynical and negative.
No, I'm enjoying it because to some extent I agree. There's a debate. Have we missed a boat, or are we seeing the lay of the land and adapting to it? And there's a part of me that feels like you're right, that actually we have missed the boat. And if we were bold at the start, we could have done something really.
And I think another factor, lockdown has changed things. Companies do work more remotely. Companies do work more decentralized. A lot more companies are now saying we don't need everyone to be based in London. If the best applicant is from Peru, great. If the best whatever is from Lithuania, great.
So long as they get the job done, it doesn't matter.
Exactly.
I'm going to ask one final question, and it's actually just about sort of your day-to-day, and that's Crypto Curry Club, which is how we met years ago. Tell me about it. Let people know what it is and what work goes into, because it's a hell of a lot of work.
Yes. So Crypto Curry Club started as a hissy fit.
Started as a hissy fit? In what way?
In years ago, years before lockdown, I wanted to learn more about crypto, and I wanted to meet other people in the space. And there was no community in London at the time. There were a few events that were good, but very, very technical and geared for coders and developers. Demonstrably not. And, great if you're a sort of coding expert, not great if you're anyone else. And pretty much every other event was a sales pitch for scams. I went to a few, and there's people just on who'd clearly paid to speak, just promoting nonsense. And so the hissy fit there's got to be a better event. Right. And so I'd been to, it was a Christmas curry, just with a friend, and it was the best networking event I'd been to, because I'm socially, I can't stand networking and meeting people, and I'm terribly introverted.
Formal networking.
Formal, and it was fantastic, because it was tables, and you're sat around, and you've got to talk this. Would you pass the naan bread, please, or would you pass whatever? And it was just so easy and fun. So I thought, well, that's exactly what we need for crypto. So Crypto Curry, a logical name. And I thought curry because it was fun to share. And then of course everyone was like, well, no, it's got to stay as being curry. So it stayed as that. So it became a really big community in the UK, and doing private invite-only lunches and dinners, getting people together. And what was really nice in the early days, it was you're in a room of everybody that's working on space. Everyone's doing something good. I vetted everyone to make sure that it's people that are out to scam or do good. So it was just a room full of people working in the space. It's easier to get to know people when you're sat around sharing food and drinks, and it became a really, really nice, friendly community, and yes, a lot of work.
And then it's become, you're at a point now where it's the courier, which sounds
Carrier.
The courier, okay, right. So Curry Club Courier, which is, well, you tell
newsletter. So that's a weekly newsletter. You
give to people for free as well.
Yes, and it takes me like a day a week to do. But it summarizes the news. It summarizes the main thing that go on, and if it's free, more people probably read it, so it's probably a good thing.
But what I'll do is I'll make sure that when I post all this, we'll have the link to it all. Not that my audience is going to be any bigger than yours. It's going to be way bigger than mine anyway, but we'll have the links to it all anyway. Yeah. Erica, thanks very much.
No, thank you for having me.
Appreciate it. This podcast does not contain any financial or legal advice, and you should not seek to rely on it as such. Opinions are the individual's own. This podcast was produced and edited by Joe Hawkins and music by Luke Carey. Thank you for listening, and see you next time.